All right, welcome back, Bears fans. This mock draft lines up perfectly with the news this morning of Luke Getsy, Andrew Janocko, and Tyke Tolbert being gone, offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, and wide receiver coach. Because if we keep Matt Eberflus, it's pretty certain that we're going to keep Justin Fields. They'll keep the rumor mill going. They'll talk about how that's not necessarily a certainty, that they'll be drafting quarterback debate, depending on which offensive coordinator we bring in, and that's going to be part of the offensive coordinator's pitch in their interviews. But it's pretty certain at this point that we'll be keeping Justin Fields. And as we've been talking about on this channel, that's the direction I want the Bears to go, and I think is best for the Bears. Doesn't mean I'm right, but that's my opinion, and that's how I feel. So my mock draft order here, the first 18 above that line are set in stone. The ones on the right of that line and below are the playoff teams. This is my projected order, how I think the playoffs are going to go, and it benefits the Bears. So there's a little bias there, but I also really do believe that's how things are going right now. So that's the order we're going to base things off of for this draft. There's going to be some off-season moves. I'm going to move through it fairly quickly so that we can get through the entire draft, and you can see the nuts and bolts, the meat of what I want to show you with this draft today. But this is my favorite draft that I put together. And the basis of it goes around this. Justin Fields is being given another opportunity in Chicago. He's going to have his third offensive coordinator. This is going to be something that benefits both him and the Bears to do something like this, a Jordan Love type of extension. So what I've got us doing is Justin Fields signing a 2-year extension. That doesn't include the 5th-year option. So when he signs an extension right now, before that's been extended, that's going to include this year, 2024, 2025, and 2026. And what I've got us doing is Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus sitting down with him and saying, look, we like you. The progress hasn't gone the way we want. We're going to get you a new offensive coordinator. We're going to draft you some new weapons. We want to be able to have a lock-in for the next 3 years so this isn't wasted time for you or for us. We're going to give you a lot of guarantees. You're going to make very little this year, but now we're going to change that and do an extension, basically a restructure of your rookie contract, just like Jordan Love did. And you can see my proposal there below. We're going to front load it a little bit. And basically what you're doing is you're taking the little over $3 million he's making this year, the $22 million that would be a 5th-year option, and the $40 million plus that he would have made with an extension from 1 year. Gives him more money, gives him more guarantees, and says, look, this way we're not spending our entire bankroll on a decision that we have to make for the future yet, but this gives us security, gives you security, and we have at least the next 3 years to work together. I really like this idea, and I hope this is something that Poles at least considering right now, and you know he's considering everything. This isn't just something that's out there and crazy. Like, this is something that could be considered. So I like that idea a lot. The other extension is Jalen Johnson. I think that one's going to be a done deal very soon. I've got him at $17.5 million average, $4 million, 4-year, $70 million extension. That's $17.5 million a year. So with that, here's a look at the salary cap, and I'm going to quickly go over some of the other off-season signings. This isn't a basis of a video for off-season signings, but this is where I'm leaning right now. So at the top, the yellow highlighted is our current salary cap, and below that, you can pause this if you want to take more time on it, but there's the 2 cuts that I'm fairly certain we're going to make because the value of them is just too great. We have too many possibilities not to cut them. That's Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair. If we cut them this year, it gives us a ton of salary cap room, between $21.5 million and $24.5 million in savings. So that's something the Bears are going to do. We basically have zero dead cap anymore. So this is really something possible. And after those 2 decisions, that would give us a total cap space of $83.5 to $86.5 million in cap space. That's among the top in the NFL. Last year we had the most after a couple moves and Montez Sweat. We don't have the most, but we're in a lot better position. So my decision is to cut Cody Whitehair now, Eddie Jackson post June 1st. You can look more into that. You can look above and see more of why. And that gives us an additional $23 million. So here's my decisions. Justin Fields is signed on the contract we just talked about. Jalen Johnson signed to his extension. We go out and get Christian Wilkins. I don't know if that's as possible now with Connor Williams being having his injury because they might not need to franchise tag him and they can use the franchise tag on Christian Wilkins, but the Dolphins are in financial issues. So that's going to be one you want to follow closely, but I've got us signing Christian Wilkins. Perfect personality, perfect beast in the middle. I mean, he's just a producer. You're going to love him. And that's not his annual salary. So as you look at that and say, well, we're not going to get him for 17.6. No, I've got us signing him for about 20.5 to 21 million, but it's not a front-loaded contract. It's a contract that escalates, like most NFL contracts do. All right, I've got us going out and getting an experienced center in Andre James from Las Vegas, $8.5 million a year. Antonio Gibson from Washington Commanders. He's a running back there. Most of you probably know who he is. His production's kind of fallen off. He's a very affordable contract now, very similar to Deonta Foreman last year. I don't see us bringing Foreman back with the way we used him at the end of last year. I just think something's a little off there, and they're going to rotate to Roschon a little bit more. But I think Antonio Gibson's a good guy to bring in for that rotational role where the Bears do need a strong offensive front at the running back room. I've got us bringing back Dylan Cole, special team specialist, backup linebacker on a league minimum contract, as well as Patrick Scales, the long snapper. If something's broke, don't fix it. So that leaves us with total space of about $15.5 million, $16 million, and the projected draft pool for our draft picks this year is a little less than what I put, but with us creating value out of trading, it goes to a little more. So it's going to be right around $11 million. That leaves us with total cap space of about $5 million. There are some more things we can do to flex a little room, but that's where we're at right now. And puts the Bears in a really good position. I'll put at the end all the picks and positions that I made afterwards. I think you're really going to like this team that I put together today. This is a good one. This is my favorite mock draft and the mock offseason so far. So my first thing is the pre-draft trade. The Bears successfully trade down with the Washington Commanders 1-1 for 1-2, 243, which was our own pick, and a 2025 first-round pick. According to the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart, that's about 900 to 1,000 over, which is accurate. That's about what this pick is going to drive. Okay. Now, a lot of you aren't going to want to see the second pick, and I don't think the Bears necessarily are stuck on it, but the draft day comes along, and the Falcons really want the quarterback of their future. The Bears have the leverage there. They weren't necessarily going to trade this pick, but the Falcons come along and overpay by about 600 and 700 points on the Jimmy Johnson chart. Now, this is, in my opinion, about accurately where that's going to fall, where you're going to get extra value because of Caleb Williams and Drake May in the fight for the top. So the option is Marvin Harrison Jr. worth a first, second, third with everything we're trying to do and a future first? Yes, but you got to weigh all the options, and I think it's going to be too much for Ryan Poles to pass up on, and he's going to go ahead and pull the trigger and trade it again. That means we'll have 3 first-round picks next year. So now we're going to be sitting with the 8th and 9th overall picks. This is realistic to me. This is where we're going to be sitting on draft day, and if we don't trade down the second time, I'm happy with that. I really am. But now with the 8th overall pick, we're going to select Rome Odunze, wide receiver out of Washington. I'm not going to go too deep into all the players on this one, but he's a clear wide receiver 1 and X receiver on the outside, someone that we need to pair up with DJ Moore. As you've heard DJ Moore talking about in his exit locker room interview, he really envisions someone on the other side as a 1,000-yard receiver too. Okay, so same thing happens at pick 9. We have our options, and right here, I think we're looking for defensive end. We're looking for Leatu Latu, Jared Verse, or Dallas Turner. Now, some of them might have gone at this point, some might not. But at this point, we're going to say all the quarterbacks haven't come off the board. And Jaden Daniels, if you look at the teams ahead of us, I'm not going to go into a full deep breakdown on this one, but of all the teams ahead of us, he might not be gone at this point. So the Raiders come calling. They want to move up. They want to get him. They're going to trade us 113, 377, 6204, and next year's 4th-round pick. And with the defensive end still available, that gives us options for the future. So we're going to go ahead and snag that trade. And yes, I am going to have some trade ups as well. I'm realistic. We're not always just going to trade back. There are going to be some places we need to trade up to get the players we need. But this leaves us options with 3 strong defensive ends that are available to us. So we're going to go ahead and initiate that trade. And now I'm going to show you where we stand with all of that. So here's our picks after the trades. We end up with 1-8 that we've already used on Rome Odunze, 113, 240 from Atlanta, 243, our own pick acquired back from Washington, 372 from Atlanta, 375, our own pick, 377 from Las Vegas, 3100, the minority initiative, the Rooney Rule for Ian Cunningham getting hired away, 4111, our own pick, 4125 from Philadelphia, 5147, our own pick, and 6204 from Las Vegas. Okay, so we've got a haul. The Bears have effectively traded down from 1 and then again traded down from 9 to 8 and 13 and picked up all this draft capital and draft capital for the future. The Bears are in a really strong position if they can pull off a draft like this. So this is why I'm excited about this draft. I hope you enjoy it. Let's keep plugging along on it. So now we're going to go and show. All right, with the 13th pick, the Bears select Dallas Turner out of Alabama. Dallas Turner isn't the biggest defensive end, which is why I haven't been hot on him. The stats are there, the production is there, the speed is there. But he's being compared to Brian Burns, and I love that. Any guy with a motor like that can push through is a guy that I want on the Bears. All right, so now here's what we're talking about. We're going to trade up. So at the beginning of the second round, the Bears see that Tyler Nubin is not gone. So spoiler, I'm going to spoil who we're going to be selecting. But we want to jump up and get him before some other teams do because he is going to be a hot commodity. It's going to be Cam Kitchens and Tyler Nubin. We're going to suppose for this one that the Eagles are going to pick Cam Kitchens, which I'm fine with either Cam Kitchens or Tyler Nubin for our safety. And I think both of them are going to go right at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Bears trade up into the first round if we've acquired this much draft capital to be able to get Tyler Nubin. I wouldn't be shocked one bit if we fall in love with him. So we're going to trade 240, our fourth-round pick from Philadelphia we got last year, and a 2025 sixth-round pick to jump up 5 spots. And yes, the value works out. And we're going to get Tyler Nubin, the safety out of Minnesota, who had a All-American year. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. He's a ball hawk. He would fit in perfectly to take over from Eddie Jackson. So I really like this pick, and I think it's worth jumping up for us to get him. Our next pick, 43rd pick, we're going to get Patrick Paul, offensive tackle. And yes, that's going to put Braxton Jones in a tough position, but iron sharpens iron. We're going to bring Patrick Paul in to compete with him for the starting position. I think he takes over, and that leaves us in a great position for us to have a swing tackle, for Braxton Jones to be a swing tackle to come in. Braxton Jones does get beat on the bull rush quite a bit. So I think it's a proper move to make. I love Braxton Jones, but he's got to keep improving and growing, and who knows, maybe he beats out Patrick Paul. All right, so again, we're going to trade up on another one. There's some value here in this first and second round that the Bears like. So we're going to trade with the Rams. We're going to come up from 372, and we're going to use our comp pick for Ian Cunningham at 100 to jump up 14 spots to come up to 258. And yes, all of these line up. All of them work on the trade value chart. With that, we're going to pick Jackson Powers Johnson. In my last mock draft, a couple of you said he's not going to last to the third round. I started viewing Jackson Powers Johnson when he was a fourth-round prospect, and yes, he's rising all the boards because his grades, he's the highest-graded PFF center out there. There's other ones that I like. Graham Barton is rising the boards quick. I'm not in love with Cedric Bonpron. I've said it several times on here. You can like him. That's fine. I don't think he's the Bears center of the future. I do see us bringing in an absolute dog like Jackson Powers Johnson and bringing him in. He can start right away, or because we signed a quality center in free agency who isn't a top-tier center, but he's a quality center. We've got options there to develop him. I really like this move a lot. 6'5", 315 pounds, and he is just as equally strong on the pass defense and the run, the pass blocking and run blocking. All right, 75th pick. He's also rising boards. We started looking at him in the fourth round, and now he's getting higher and higher. He's a beginning of the third-round prospect. We're taking Brendan Rice, son of Jerry Rice, wide receiver out of USC. It's going to complete our wide receiver room and a solid move we need to make. All right, because we just picked twice in the 70s, we're going to trade back now. The Buccaneers want to move up to 77. We're going to get 389, a third-round pick, number 89 overall. We're going to drop 12 spots. We're going to pick up their 127th pick, the fourth round, and next year's fifth-round pick. And yes, guys, all these trades line up with how trade values work. This is all stuff I research and study, And yes, they all line up, in case you're wondering. So it's not out there. It's not on the moon type of stuff. This is realistic of what could happen. So I see polls trading back once again, getting some more value out of the draft. And with that, in the 89th pick, third round, we're going to select Zach Zinter, the guard out of Michigan. Now, Zach Zinter had a pretty rough injury that took him out. Right around Thanksgiving, he had a gruesome leg injury that broke his tibia and fibia. Because of that, I think his draft stock isn't going to keep rising. He was one of the huge risers. He was coming up the boards fast. I think there's going to be some value here. He may not be ready by the beginning of offseason, but he's a guy that we want. He's a guy that everyone's going to want. He's kind of the Andrew Voorhees of last year. He's going to be ready before Voorhees was. Voorhees was basically a scratch for this year, most of the year. So he's going to come back. He's just going to be a little delayed. He's going to need some rehab. But he's a guy that we definitely can take to fill some of those holes we're getting from Nate Davis. We're keeping Nate Davis's contract at least one more year, and he can come in and slowly learn and take over. And then if we need to cut Davis next year, that's a viable option. All right, with the 111th pick, we're going to pick Cade Stover, tight end out of Ohio State. He's a bruiser. He's a converted linebacker who has hands with sticky glue. Perfect to pair up in the 12 personnel sets with Cole Kmet. All right, with the 127th pick, we're going to pick Darius Robinson, who was rising boards quickly. He might not be here, but he's a guy that, if you've watched my other videos, you know I've fallen in love with him. Put him on the defensive line, let him develop behind some of the studs we have, and he's going to be a great fit for us. And then to back up Justin Fields, we're going to pick at the 147th pick, Joe Milton III, quarterback out of Tennessee. We're not going to spend a bunch of time on these later round picks, but I think he's a very quality guy with quick release, but accuracy problems. He can throw the ball literally 90 yards. He can throw it farther than anybody I've ever seen, but he doesn't pinpoint like Justin Fields does. So he's the perfect type of backup quarterback to bring in to learn behind someone, see how they do for a couple years under a system. This paired up with Justin Fields signing the 3-year contract from 24 to 26 lines up perfectly. If things are working up with Fields where we extend him long term, and some other teams like the way Joe Milton has progressed and he comes into some of our blowout games and lights it up, he's trade value. We'll just have to see what happens. But smart teams pick backup quarterbacks to develop them in the background. So I like this pick quite a bit of Joe Milton. I really think he's a strong prospect to keep developing. He's not NFL ready right now, but he's a solid backup to bring in. And the last pick we'll have is the one we acquired, 6th round. There's going to be Quincy Riley, cornerback out of Louisville, just to give us some depth in our cornerback room who does need a little bit more help. We have strong starters, especially re-signing Jalen Johnson. We've got a little weakness in the depth. So this gives us a little more strength. All right, we've addressed all of our needs. We've got Rome Odunze at wide receiver from Washington, as well as Brendan Rice from USC, the wide receiver, at 375. So 2 wide receivers in the first 3 rounds, and I think that's appropriately where we could pick those picks to pick up our wide receiver room. New wide receiver coach coming in is going to be salivating at that with DJ Moore. Also, I'm not going to discount Tyler Scott. If you saw his interview yesterday with Adam Rank, he's very excited to put the work in this offseason. I think he's a very smart, very intelligent young man who can put the work in and take that next step up. Our offensive line has taken a major overhaul with Patrick Pollard, offensive tackle, Jackson Powers-Johnson at center, and Zach Zinter at guard. We've got one at each position, which was needed. Our safety and our cornerback, our secondary room, Tyler Newton and Quincy Riley. I don't expect big things out of the 6th and 7th rounders, just like last year. I don't expect miracles, but it's nice to have some depth there. Cade Stover at tight end. This is a quality draft to me. This is my favorite draft that I've put together so far. Now, obviously, as the offseason goes along, things change. We'll see what happens with who we pick up in the offseason, which begins in March 11th, I believe. Don't hold me to that. But here's our future draft picks because of what we did in this draft. The Bears now own 3 first-rounders next year, 2 second-rounders, 2 thirds, 2 fourths, 2 fifths, and a 6th. If the Bears are competing and clicking at a high level like they should be with this team, this gives us flexibility to go out and make some trade deadline acquisitions happen, or we can continue to build brick by brick for the future. Any way you slice it, having this much draft capital is a good thing. This is something that Ryan Pace left us without. He decimated this team because of it. Ryan Poles is turning this around, so this MO really does work for where he's headed. I would love to see the Bears in this position where the entire league is talking about them. We had 2 first overall picks 2 years in a row, and that left us with this draft call that lasts forever. Right, so here's the updated offense after the changes. I'm not going to go through every single person, but it fits with what we just did, and I really love this. This would be a team for the possibilities. This team could do so much good, and I would love to see it. Hopefully Nate Davis gets motivated by this and turns things around. Hopefully Braxton Jones keeps competing and fighting. But it gives us a really strong base for this offense to move forward. The same on the defense. With the additions we made and where things are, adding Dallas Turner, adding Christian Wilkins, adding Darius Robinson, that is a stout defensive line. I'm not sold on Dominique Robinson. I think at this point we're almost a cutting bait with him, so there is some still work to be done there. But next year's draft class, 2025, is extremely strong at defensive end. So we take one of those first-round picks next year, and we can once again put it at our edge, at our middle of our line, maybe to replace Billings. There's options we have depending on how Dallas Turner works out. All right, so we're not going to spend any more time on that. We've got all of those done. This is it. This is my mock draft 5.0. I hope you liked it. Please, if you haven't hit the like button or subscribe, please do both. I really do appreciate it. It helps me continue to progress and move this. We are making some small changes to continue to improve it, to make it stronger and better. The sound quality will be improving very soon. We're working on that. I am fairly new to this, but I do appreciate all of you tuning in, all of you helping me to grow this. And until next time, bear down.